Bonjour à tous.
Hello, everyone.
Est-ce que le son est bon pour vous?
Très bien. On t'entend très très bien.
Parfait.
Donc, bonjour à tous.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this last session of our Climate Change Summit, Africa 2021, our virtual summit. We should have been in Dakar with our partners, CODATU, CEDETU, for the week of sustainable mobility and climate. Unfortunately, we had to postpone this to another time due to the pandemic, yet we were able to still organize this session virtually. It has been very important. We wanted to make sure that we had this time before the COP26, beginning of November in Glasgow. It was important to continue mobilizing all the non-state actors for climate action. We were surprised to see so many people interested in this event. We had over 5,000 people who have registered to take part in the 3-day summit. To talk about initiatives and climate focuses. It has been a beautiful success. Many people, many speakers, about 130 speakers altogether to share about best practices. We've been very happy to be here with you. Thank you for joining us for this last session. Thank you. And we don't want to take too long, but we want to summarize the outputs, the result, the outcomes of what has stood out during the 3 days, and also to invite or to open up the way, rather, to future events for mobility, the climate agenda, and other events which will be presented to you by our various speakers. Without further ado, I'm now going to give the floor to our speakers. First, Thibault de Lambert, Secretary General of CODATU. You have the floor.
Oui, vous m'entendez?
Can you hear me?
Bonjour.
Hello, everyone.
Alors, je n'ai pas la prétention de vous faire une synthèse.
I would not claim to give you a synthesis. But from what I've heard, and from the quality of all the speakers, we can simply come to realize and conclude that everyone has become aware of the necessity for action.
Des débats, il est urgent de passer maintenant aux actes.
From discussions and debates, it is time now to move on to action. We talked about this yesterday during the mobility workshop, and we need to implement sustainable and functional actions in order to reverse the trend.
Thibault.
Je vais peut-être couper ma vidéo parce que j'ai un problème de connexion.
I'm gonna switch off my video.
Faisons une dernière tentative, ouais.
Let's try again.
Donc, si les pays du Nord, pour la plupart,
If the northern countries, for the greatest part, I think that's where I stopped before we got cut off. If the northern countries, for the great majority, have started taking actions, there is still much to do, and the goals are still far from being reached. Regarding the southern countries, even more so for Africa, the stakes, challenges are even more complex because there's a high demography, there is still a lot of poverty. In order to reach our goals, the African countries, that's the synthesis that I got from this summit, will have to look for satisfactory solutions while protecting their common interests. We all know about what's happening around the use of water, Nile water, financial institutions, whether they be local, regional, continental, international, to maintain these institutions and to come up with new offers, new solutions to help them in order to impact the populations for better living conditions. Governments in the African countries will have to continue their efforts in governance by relying more on the territories and monitoring tools and sufficient funding. My association, organization CODATU, of which I'm the General Secretary, has been doing this for the last 40 years. Even though there is still much to do, things are changing slightly. Proof is what's happening in Senegal. I saw my friend Tierno, he will be speaking later on, with what's happening in Senegal in terms of mobility, but also in other countries, poorer countries like Burkina Faso, where personally I was able to see for myself. I was part of a project, an exemplary project as far as I'm concerned. It's the only project that I know of in sub-Saharan Africa that gathers all the elements for success: governance, social, economic model, finances, skills, environmental stakes, etc. CODATU had planned on having its large conference in Daca with climate change and CEDETU in Senegal. For us, CODATU, when it comes to climate and mobility issues, as far as we're concerned, these issues are fully part of what we're doing, which is why we did not want to cancel our conference, but we have decided to postpone it till next year, similar to the one that we had planned before, along with our partners. We invite you to be in Dakar next year, as from September 19, 2022. Congratulations to Climate Change for holding this summit on this topic that is even more urgent than yesterday, climate action. Thank you, Thibault. Now I will ask a question to Tierno, General Director of the CETUD. Tierno, over the last 3 days during this summit, there was high mobilization of Senegalese actors, probably mainly thanks to you, and because we had started preparing this conference together. We have been so happy to hear about so many best practices, good practices in Senegal, people from the mobility sector and other sectors. How what would you say? How do you see this mobilization in Senegal? Are you seeing a real build-up of mobilization of Senegalese actors? How could we keep on improving this mobilization in the next year as we prepare for this next joint conference? Mainly, thank you, Romain. I also want to thank all the core organizers, Kodatu Sedut and Climate Change. And I also greet Mrs. Mayor from Daca. I would like to talk about transitions and challenges. Transitions and challenges. We will consider them together. I think we have shown that with this pandemic, which we are still fighting, we will have to be supporting one another. As we summarize all the various contributions, and when we look at what's happening in Senegal, we can see three main challenges, and we want to continue working on these three axes in the coming years. The challenge of governance. 70% of gas emission are the results of urban areas. We are doing this energy transition. In 2050, we have a target of 1.5 for places that are highly exposed to climate change with a strong demographic growth and many other challenges. The challenge of governance is to implement a strong mobility in capital cities like ours, but not only, but also in medium-sized cities which will double their population. We are very happy to be a member of this initiative, Mobilize Your City. And we think that as of 2022, we will be able to launch a national plan with some reforms. I would like to close this section of governance to say that we need to increase cooperation between the North and the South, but also cooperation between the South and the South for our sustainable development pathways, mainly investment for transport, public transport. The second challenge is funding. It will be necessary to lead reforms because the needs are huge. If we take Daca, 23% of the total population, 50% of the urban population focused on a small part of the territory. This is also contributing to the economic growth, which is why the head of state has prioritized carbon-free transportation to respect the environment and to have inclusive economic. We want to go beyond. We want to go beyond the typical funding sources to find new sources of funding, including the private sector, which is why we are also working in Senegal to launch and boost these projects on the basis of a private-public partnership for long-term or sustainable transport. I try to keep it short, but I would like to say that in these funding schemes, it would be necessary to tax those that are polluting the most and to make sure that we can draw from resources in the city and implement mechanisms that will discourage the polluters. Now, the third challenge is how are we going to modernize mass transport we don't want to exclude the worker, the craft men and women. We have a good experience in this sense. Since 1997, we have organizing this sector by modernizing this sector in the capital and also in the smaller cities. And we want to make sure that all of the sector will take on board sustainability, development. We do not want to exclude anyone. Just to give you some example, with the increase of our transport capacity, a growth of our grid, power grid, we are also working on a development of our transport network to bring life to the craft and the local crafts, so that local actors can be part of demanding networks in terms of quality. And we are planning on having a participation with the BRT project, which will be built on the basis of a public-private partnership. We're talking about transition from the craft sector to the more formal sector. I would like to end by saying that through the three main challenges, which correspond to transitions to come, we will have also to take into account transversal challenges, universal challenges, to always remember what are our resources. We will have, for example, to take into account the digital transition, keep on working on the environmental transition and energy transition, and to develop more resilient cities to climate change, to draw from lessons learned through the pandemic. Finally, I would like to thank all the participants, all the organizers, my colleagues from CETUD and ADEP and the Ministry of Environment of Senegal, CODATU, Climate Change, for high-level debates. We will be more than happy to welcome you in Daca, a beautiful capital city, next year, next September. It would be for us the opportunity of seeing a new side of Africa, moving Africa that is really changing both in its transport sector, and we wish to reach sustainable economic growth that will be more inclusive and more respectful of the environment. Thank you very much indeed. We long to be able to meet in Dakar again. We were able to visit you, to meet you, to prepare this summit. There is much going on in Dakar indeed, especially regarding mobility. It's quite impressive what you are implementing. So we hope to see you soon. I'm now going to move on. At Climate Change, we often talk about a coalition of actors gathering diverse stakeholders from NGO, from the private sector, from research sector. CETUD is also part of those bodies involved in this new coalition on mobility with various roadmaps. We will also do it with CETUD in Senegal. Now, I'm now going to give the floor to one of the major pillar of this coalition, who has been working with us on the sector of sustainable cities, the FNAU. This is why I wanted to invite Marianne Mallet, Director of Sustainable Cities and International Initiatives, to tell us a bit more about what the FNAU did this year before this summit. You had your workshop yesterday, I believe. Yes. Thank you, Romain, for giving us the floor. Well done, and congratulations for maintaining this summit, which is a very important event. Just to give you some feedback from our workshop, planification, sustainable cities and climate, our coalition is the African region is very much mobilized in our coalition. Yesterday, we had a beautiful workshop with much content. Of course, we're starting by agreeing on an emergency for action, talking about climate vulnerability and talking about the emergency to help the most vulnerable populations. What we said yesterday is that we needed to build on the relationship with a strong public governance, with an ambitious public governance. We keep on saying this, and we continue to be convinced of this need. Another word that was used much yesterday and was repeated is the word responsibility. Yesterday, we had elected members, we had companies, we had builders, financial backers, and all committed to take on their responsibilities without hiding behind any excuses. And we agreed on saying that responsibilities should be carried by each and everyone, but also collectively. There was a very interesting interview yesterday, a systematic answer for a systematic issue. This is really our message. Let us implement tools that would enable us to carry out our work. There are development cells and other bodies so that all actors can work together, and that's how we will succeed in our achievements, and that's how we will work better together as we get to know each other better, as we understand each other's challenges. Of course, we want to also include local elected members, financial backers who are also key players. Sometimes we do have difficulties understanding what we want or understanding one another. Yesterday, we had another very good message regarding climate actions and ambitious action. Of course, we will follow through all the coming events. There will be also the AfriCity event, and we would like to meet you again in June 2022 for this World Forum, which is taking place every 2 years, organized by UN Habitat on the development of territories. And we want to make sure that the elected members, the local partners, the businesses, the companies are heard on this issue. We are also working with climate change to make recommendations in that sense, keeping in mind what has been shared and said during these workshops. That's it for me. Thank you. Thank you. Now we will move on to our next speaker. And I would like to welcome Mrs. Mayor of Daca, to thank her for getting involved in this event. We had planned many things with the city of Dakar. We should have met at the Hôtel de Ville, the town hall. There were going to be exhibitions and meetings. Thank you for your teams. Some of your technicians of very high level were present in many of our sessions, in many of our workshops, also during the COM-SSA meeting. So thank you for this, but I want to ask you one question. How will we be able to reinforce our collaboration so that next year's event could be even more interesting and even more efficient and effective for Dakar? Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Thank you very much, Romain. Again, I want to greet everyone. I was not able to attend all the sessions, but our teams were there, as you said, and took part in all of the sessions. How to strengthen our partnership? I think we are already on the right track with our teams from the city and all those working on the issues of climate, the energy territorial plan. We are ready to continue working with you. What I would like to say is to congratulate CODATU, CETUD for this virtual climate change summit, Africa 2021. I want to thank all our panelists for the quality of their presentation. That's what I've been told. The sessions highlighted the importance of resorting to funding for developing local action, local climate action. Therefore, it is important to mobilize the necessary funds. We need to keep on working for better access to fundings in Africa to reach our NDCs and reach the goals of the COP26 regarding sustainable mobility. I also want to congratulate the General Director of CETUD for all the efforts that have been carried out by the Senegalese government through the BRT and TRL projects. I believe transport will be cleaner and the city of Dakar will be also cleaner. We do have a project for a clean city. There's a lot of congestion and I'm sure the city will be able to breathe at last. However, this has to be consistent with the local action, with the development of bicycle paths or ways. These kinds of actions can include vertical integration and decentralization to facilitate climate action. The World Water Forum will take place also in 2022. I believe there was a session on adaptation and water, which was also a very important session. The city of Dakar will welcome this forum in 2022. We have signed a partnership with this forum. This was signed on September 8th. We will think again about the future of water for peace and development, and we will develop a strategy for adaptation and water. In the meantime, we are ready, our teams are ready to continue working together, and I will see you in Dakar in 2022 for the Climate Change Summit. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for your kind words, your encouraging words, and we are all mobilized to meet again as soon as possible and continue moving ahead. Now I will give the floor to my president, Senator Roland Dantec, present, and he is going to create a link between what we are doing on a daily basis with the climate change teams and this community that we are mobilizing. He's going to create the link with the more international context and to see how everything is connected to the international context. Thank you, Ronan. Thank you, Romain. All the energy that was deployed is fabulous. So, Madam Mayor of Dakar, I'm very frustrated not to be in Dakar with you, but it is just postponed. We will meet again next year because despite everything, a virtual summit is not the real thing. It is not as usual when we have time to meet after the different sessions and we can speak in this beautiful city of Dakar. So I think that this virtual summit has proven the energy, the momentum that exists in your cities. And it is very true that we still need to have access to financing in order to finance all these projects. If there's no momentum and dynamics on the field between the different actors, the states, the collectivities, nothing can be done. So I believe that the Senegal today is a showcase of mobilization, a spotlight shed on it. And I believe so that we are going to have the COP in Glasgow, a COP that is going to be a complicated one because we have different articles. We are finishing the architecture of the Paris Agreement and so it's difficult with the price of the carbon depending on the countries, and these are huge challenges. We have all these questions linked to transparency, and it is also due to data. We need data to measure the impact of these carbon emissions, and it will be a difficult COP. As we know, the world is not at peace yet, and there are divisions and complications that are there. The discussions on the climate topic are always difficult, and this COP in Glasgow, besides the logistics, all actors do not have the same access to vaccination. Therefore, it's more difficult for them to travel. So I believe that this virtual summit, having taken part in different workshops, I believe now it is the tipping point. And this turning point represents the story of climate change. Notably, during the opening, the mobility session, there were several speakers, namely the AFD director, who said, we cannot reason in terms of infrastructure for heavy infrastructure. Now, what we need to do is to think with a mobility approach. This means taking into account all of the actors, and this is a different approach. And I believe that we are at this changing point, this turning point. We have with great actors, great financial backers. Without them, it won't work. So we need, as we did in France not so long ago, with all the territories, if we don't have these new logics in terms of governance, we cannot succeed. So we had a workshop that just finished recently with the Great Green Mural. We said that it's a great project, but if on the field we don't gather all of the actors, they don't come to work closely together, it won't be possible. We won't succeed. And I think that at these times, if there is a message to pass on, and this is what we're trying to do with climate change and the summit, the African summit, as the Secretary General said, that we have this effective link now. We're breaking up silos. We're breaking the logics of the great institutions. We are trying to work differently. We want everybody to be able to exchange and speak. So it is very important for me. And another point, which is the DNA of climate change as well. We mentioned it in several workshops. We are not achieving what we want to do if we don't answer to the other agendas as well, not only climate. There are great environmental issues. There's the Convention on Desertification, and we wanted to also have workshops that spoke about diversity and mentioned diversity, because we need this convergence. We need to preserve the carbon sinks, we need biodiversity, but the restoration of the land also is about these carbon sinks. It is, of course, the case of development as well. So I said it in my introduction, and I'd like to remind you of this, that Africa has suffered as the rest of the world, but I saw the last figures in the last weeks. The African continent has especially suffered from the COVID pandemic. There is a real need for a recovery plan and access to vaccination, an equal access to vaccination compared to European countries, for example. Otherwise, the entire architecture crumbles. We need to have access to vaccination for everyone, and we need to have development logics that integrate and embed climate issues and topics. And we need to have this question of development to be central. We want to have better levers for better development in the territories. This question of development is crucial, and it will be raised in Glasgow. So for this summit, as Romain said, I think caught the interest of many people. And of course, we are anxious to have these physical summits again. But this is still great that we were able to hold this summit. This can generate new projects as well. So we will come back to face-to-face summits whenever it will be possible. But there are these digital tools that will still continue to be used. I don't think we will go backwards, but I hope to see what happens in Glasgow, to see the solidarity that exists, biodiversity stakes, challenges, and make sure that this community, this climate community, widens even more and spreads, and that everybody can be mobilized, because it is just through the multiple actions and multiplicity of actions that we will succeed, and we will need to adapt. We won't go back to the climate we had at the beginning of the century. There's no way. So thank you, Renan. So it is an easy transition now, as if prepared, right? So now we will give the floor to the mayor of Poitiers, who is also vice president of Cité Unifrance and president of Dynamics Climate, Léonore Mauconduit, vice president of Cité Unifrance, president in charge of Climate Dynamics. What, for you, as elected representative, what will you bring to Glasgow for the COP26 in your luggage? So thank you for being here and sharing your experience with us. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I will start by speaking about the Cité Unifrance that I'm representing today here with you. And I will not forget to answer your question at the end. My speech will be brief. I want to thank you for having associated me to the closing of this event, this important event. I am Vice President of Cité Unifrance, and I am a host. So Cité Unifrance, I'd like to recall, is a network of French collectivities engaged internationally. I hope I will support and carry the voice of collectivities more widely at the COP26 very shortly, very soon. Thank you to the organizers for organizing this event, for the conference, and thank you for your mobilization during these 3 days. As I understood, it was a great success, despite the frustration not to having held this summit face-to-face. We had feedback on the quality of the workshops. So it is also the occasion to say that the Unifrance Réseau network is very mobilized in Africa around climate issues, and Mr. Ngacha is also active on these topics, and we are leading on these subjects. Our cross-section functional engagement is growing. Last year, this confirmed the great interest of collectivities to seize this in their different actions. I know a lot of you took part in it, and this is in line with other networks, ULCG, with whom I also discussed this morning. 2 examples of actions led by Cité Unifrance around these questions. Last year, we had a transversal workshop. We also have different groups for countries, zones, and one country that I'm following closely, Poitiers in France, has a cooperation with Chad. So we worked with the 2 groups, Sahel and Climate, and we tried to see how we could support with these climate change issues. Another example, we were, as you were, struck by the fires that devastated part of the Mediterranean area, and we are trying to provide an answer as in crisis management, and trying to see how in the long term we can support the collectivities with the right support to prepare the things, but also have the what is needed in times of crisis in this specific climate context we are in. So in the restitution of the workshops and what I heard this evening, there are very important challenges. I noted the importance to invest in resilience, meaning not only in the mitigation of climate change, but also building the sustainability of our territories, working on mobility, working on the soft aspects as well, with calls for tenders to strengthen the calls for a strengthening of capacities. And when you have a demanding project, you need demanding competences and skills, and therefore the adapted trainings. There is a trust in public bodies and instances. So as you said, we need public mobility as being done in Daca. I also appreciated the call for global mobility. I also appreciated the systemic approach that I heard of in your different speeches. There's a multiplicity of actors that goes beyond the national borders. But to answer to your question, what am I going to bring to the COP26? Of course, I'm going to take a train to go there. Exemplarity, being a role model is important. And so what I think is more important is the message that I will carry to the COP, and to situate our action in a certain context. It's the first COP26 after the publication of the first report of the IPCC. So how to solve climate issues, we need to look at things in terms of adaptation. We need to know that we need to adapt. We mustn't wait to go over the 1.5 degrees. We talked about emergency. I heard that word at different times. And we say that collectivities that I will represent at the COP26 are on the front line of this mitigation to reduce the impact on climate change. But the more we move ahead, I think we will even more be on the front line of this mitigation and adaptation on the long term. It is necessary to give us the right means to face the situation. We need human means, financial means, but having a role in governments for the transition that must be adopted, as it was said. Collectivities need to have a role to play, not only for the implementation, but a strategic role on how we can protect the inhabitants and how we can lead this transition. I believe this is also the occasion to rethink clearly our partnerships on the international level, think of a certain vision of solidarity. And for our international action, I think this can give us more reciprocity. We need to see what exists in certain areas, and are certain areas adapting? Agriculture, farming, how can we find inspiration to in the way that things are done abroad? And to finish, that is the message I will bring to the COP26. I would like to thank all the presents who were here during the summit, and Climate Chance. I would like to thank also Renaud Dantec in particular, Platforma, CGLU, Africa, namely, so UCLG Africa, for its presidency, its general secretariat, who have been allies, long-date allies in the summits, Africité, for example. And I want to wish good luck to everyone in all the projects you are conducting and leading and steering. So I want to say, I hope to see you soon in Glasgow, for those who will be able to come. Thank you. Thank you very much. So you said quite a lot of things. There's the importance of reciprocity, as you said. There was a huge session on the subject of cooperations, decentralization. I think it was yesterday. So thank you very much for that. The transition, once again, is found very well. We have here with us a representative of the UNFCCC. So for the Convention of the United Nations that organizes the COP, Fiona Napier, who is engagement lead for Africa with the Climate Champions team. And I'd like to also thank them and Fiona for being present and having been involved, because the champion Nigel Topping was with us during the opening, and we really had a collaboration during the 3 days of this event. Thank you very much for being here, Fiona. And I would like to ask you now, what about the preparation for the COP26? What is happening, and what place is going to be given to actors, local actors, in a COP that, as we know, is a complicated one in terms of organization, given the context? Thank you very much for your words to tell us more about it.
Thank you. I will speak in English, if that's okay. Thank you very much, Romain, and colleagues in Climate Chance, and indeed the hosts of this conference, which has had some really, really interesting and insightful observations and commitments to action from leaders involved with cities and also involved with climate change across the continent and indeed elsewhere in the world too. And we know that this coming decade will decide the future of the planet and humanity. It's the decade of urgent action. And we've also heard from many speakers that on top of increasing inequality and climate change, we also have the COVID crisis, which has hit many parts of the world, including Africa. And there is yet to have, we're yet to see real drive on vaccine availability in the continent. And I really want to devote some attention at the moment to cities, which for us are really the crucible of change. Cities are where so many sectors and so many layers of governance meet. And it's where industries develop, it's where people earn a living, it's where new ideas happen, it's where the change that we need to see is often cited. And in fact, it was in a city on the continent of Africa 10 years ago, Durban, in 2011 at COP17, where cities were first identified as being important actors in climate change. And now we know they're home to more than half of humanity. And we also know that on the continent, cities are growing at twice the global average. So we can expect 1 billion people in Africa living in cities by 2030. And the growth is horizontal of many of these cities. So the urban-rural nexus and the territorial contiguity is important. And that's been touched upon by leadership from Senegal and elsewhere in the conference. We also know that transport is vital to keep economies going and to move people in cities and also rural areas. And this has been a large focus of many discussions, both held with city leadership, but also elsewhere in the world that we in the high-level champions have been involved with. We have to think, it's clear, and manage change across multiple systems, as the head of Climate Chance just pointed out, and as we heard from leadership in Daca on the panel today. And that's what the UN High-Level Climate Champions does. That's what we are committed to doing, is to look into how we can drive change across different systems, working with multiple different partners, working with multiple different actors in the non-state sector. And that includes cities and states and businesses, universities, NGOs, small medium enterprises, youth groups, all forms of different leadership. And the mandate of the UN High-Level Champions is to focus on driving that non-state action in support of governments who have the responsibility to negotiate the climate change treaties. And that's why in our team, the UN High-Level Champions, have been so focused on race to zero, getting emissions to zero across different sectors, mainly in business, and mainly in the developed world, who are driving and are responsible for most of the emissions. And in Africa, of course, where Africa on current estimates contributes less than 5% of global greenhouse gas emissions, the focus has been very much on resilience. And that's why we also have a focus on race to resilience, which I think you have heard about during this conference. And it's been interesting to engage with large cities like Lagos with 20 million residents, and they have a resilience plan. And we know that cities more and more around the world are really focused, as the mayor of Poitiers just said, on the importance of resilience. And I also want to call out Dakar, where we hope to be next year, which with your 1.5 degree aligned climate plan, and which is one of 9 cities on the African continent, which is part of Race to Zero. So in Race to Zero, we are driving a campaign which has nearly 800 cities now as members, and we'd love to be involved in more discussions with city leadership who are looking at advancing change across their cities, including, as was mentioned, transport and getting clean and emissions-free transport systems. As Romain points out, we're only 6 weeks away from COP in Glasgow. And yes, there's some uncertainty about the nature of that conference in terms of virtual, hybrid, who will be attending, who will not be attending. I've just seen that the UK government has taken some more countries off the red list. We can expect changes in the next 6 weeks to try and facilitate, I can't speak for the UK government host, but to try and facilitate as many people as possible attending in person. And yes, COP26 will be challenging because it requires really courageous leadership to raise the ambition on action, the kind of courageous leadership that we've seen in this conference. And we need that leadership to be really accountable for commitments, to be committed to staying the long term to drive that change, up to the stock take, which will happen in 2023 on the NDCs, the National Development Contributions, and to driving change in cities, in economies. And we know this takes time. And also to be thinking about charting the next steps to COP27, which will be hosted in Africa. We don't have official announcements yet, but I hope we will hear soon. So it is a chance, and Climate Chance is the last conference in Africa before COP26, for messages from this conference to go to COP26 and to form part of the work plan for COP27 next year. And this conference that we've just been privileged to be part of really represents that prestigious leadership that's needed to raise the ambition and action within cities and within economies for Glasgow to COP27. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Fiona.
Thank you very much, Fiona. Thank you for all these encouragements. We're very proud also to have set our event on the agenda of these important events on climate and with Africa. It is a real pride, and we know of all the difficulties of in the organization of such a COP with the presidency, the UNFCCC. So we are very careful and attentive to all the possible evolutions, and we hope we will have a place that will be as important as possible for the commitment of non-state. I will now move on to the last speaker, Mr. Amadou Ndiaye, a counselor of the World Forum, Executive Secretary of the World Water Forum, Dakar 2022. Are you here? If you are, please take 5 minutes to speak if you can. I think you have a PowerPoint presentation which is very long. Are you here? Yes, I am here. Thank you very much. So, of course, I couldn't not mention, as Madame Mayor of Dakar mentioned it earlier, we could not invite the organizers of this World Forum that will be held in a few months in Dakar, and we have started to collaborate. And they started preparing the forum, so we're happy to have you with me. And we want to look at the challenges that you have seen for this new meeting in Dakar. I will give you the floor for 5 minutes, please, and then we will go back to Paris, come back to Paris for our conclusion, and not to keep people from too long. Yes, thank you. Thank you. A great thank you to all the participants, the organizers, especially for providing us with the opportunity to speak and share with all the actors that work in water, because of course everything you're doing when you work on climate change, water is crucial, and I believe that this is something we have in common. I want to apologize. I want to show my slides, if possible, in full screen. Okay, I think it's better now. All right. So here, I'm not going to go back to this morning, but I'm going to quickly look over this presentation, and first the challenges and components of the forum. Before beginning, just to tell you that the forum was an object of a report published in March 2021, and with the known circumstances of the COVID, we had to postpone it to March 2022 and from 21st to 27th of March. I have a problem here. I'm sorry and I apologize. So here we are. For the forum, I believe that most of you, the theme is water security for peace and development. And it cannot be clearer than that. To guarantee peace, you need to guarantee development, and I believe that this must go through the water mastery. So I think you already know that Senegal is a member country of a high level on water, that group, and Senegal is also, at least currently today, has great performances in terms of hydro diplomacy, water diplomacy, and water security with the basin of the Senegal stream and the Gambia stream. So we have worked in order for this leadership to pursue, to continue. What are the expectations? We need to answer to the global preoccupations and worries. So each country should be able to be present. There are great water challenges across the world, and I mentioned earlier, it's true for the SDGs, but this is a forum that wants to catalyze all of the commitments. This is what I said. There's an agenda with the SDGs, the Paris Agreement on climate. To do so, what we decided to focus our exchanges around 4 themes. The 4 themes: water security, sanitation. Some are going to think that water security and sanitation are crucial in order to address all of the water quality and access to sanitation. Water and rural development. For the African continent, you see that the rural areas, it is a reality. They need to have better conditions, better living conditions as well. Cooperation is the 3rd pillar, 3rd priority. As I said before, the organization around the Senegal stream and the Gambia stream, as concerning Senegal and neighboring countries, tools and means, that is to answer to the access to knowledge and financing. To do so, what we noted is that the forum's components, elements, all the activities now, there will be one summit with the chief of states and governments and great international institutions. It is important to speak together among different actors, users, but I think we will also need commitments. And to speak about commitments, you need to think about the chief of states and the great institutions, international institutions, which will support in the decision making. We need to make sure that this summit can lead to a strong political commitment. The forum represents a platform for multi-actor exchanges. This time, as we said, we shouldn't have what we usually have, work in silos, some working on one side, others on the other, and then there's no harmony. We need everyone together talking through a platform, and this is how we will have common declarations. The Daca 2022 initiative, number 3. I want to apologize, Mr. Ndiaye. You have 2 more minutes. So I will go quickly and maybe go I talked about this before. I also mentioned the multi-actor platform, so I'm going to move on. I talked about the Dakar 2022 initiative. It is an initiative that is planned to identify all the projects, innovative projects that can be duplicated and that have an impact, strong impact. So we need levers in order to accelerate things. Exhibitions, we have a exhibition, African village, a village for sanitation, and Q&A session. So this is now to see the situation, the actual situation. And I'd like to say that the platform, multi-actor platform, it's a collaborative platform that is going to be implemented, and we are preparing everything that concerns the different themes. We have just prepared the forum program agenda, and we will discuss in the next meeting on the 14th and 15th. There are great activity, a lot of chief of states summit, the chief of state summits mobilization is also the object for partnership development on local and national level. There have been protocols that have been signed for partnerships with institutions, private companies as well. In terms of communication, we developed a marketing strategy. And there is also the involvement of media for information promotion, a website and for the forum that you can take a look at right after. The initiative Dakar 2021 and 2022. Today we have 140 projects received, 54 countries. Some already received are labelized, received the label, and the impact of COVID-19 now. The COVID, it was not only negative, it helped us better understand that a lot of issues are linked to water issues. The forum has also enabled, the COVID, excuse me, has enabled us to, has led us to new technological approaches because we want to have recourse to all these digital tools. Logistics now. We need to welcome people, have the best conditions possible. Housing also is important, and we need to investigate to have a good hosting for these guests and activities around the different exhibitions. I mentioned the exhibitions before, the different options that you have, fairs, exhibitions, for the next steps. Very quickly, I believe that what is important that we have in the future, a meeting of stakeholders on the 14th and 15th of October to validate the program and also commit to the forum's perspectives. There's also the political promotion and diplomatic promotion with the UN, UE, Asia, Latin America, pursuing with the promotion in the regions, themes and partnerships, and I think that now we have the right means to contribute. The second meeting I mentioned already, I'm not going back to that, organization of the Forum Week. This will be the next step with what is planned, all the activities, the summit of the chief of states, great institutions, and of course, it will be followed by the dissemination and valorizations of the results of the forum. I know I was a bit long, I apologize, but I really wanted to call for a strong mobilization of all actors. I believe that once again, we must speak to all the different actors. We must be able to reach out to as many people as possible for this Dakar meeting to be a success. I want to thank you once again for your attention.
Et vous transmettrez évidemment mes amitiés à Abdoulaye Sen, que nous croisons depuis très longtemps et qui s'investit au niveau international depuis très longtemps, même du temps où il était président de la très belle.
We will send our greetings to your colleague. I was actually his Secretary General. Okay, it's been a long friendship relationship. This summit, therefore, will be an important, a key moment, you have said, with adaptation to climate change and water adaptation. This summit will also be for the next COP, the African COP, COP27, and the Climate Change Summit in September 22 will also be like a pre-COP for climate. What you are going to be organizing when it would be an extremely important event for rolling out the agenda for next year. This will be an opportunity to continue discussing and sharing. As you can see, this picture of the whole room of our collaborators and colleagues indicates the end of the summit. As a president of Climate Change, I want to thank the whole team with me. As you can see, there were many people behind the camera. Thank you, Romain, who has been in charge of organizing this summit. He's in charge of all our programs, but the whole team has been mobilized. We want to thank the whole team. The team has really been involved. They wanted to save the summit. Of course, it's better to meet and greet. It's much better than being all locked in this room for the last 3 days. And yet, I think it is important that we could keep in touch. Many people have joined our workshop. There were some very good workshops. We were able to appreciate the African dynamism, especially in Senegal. I want to greet again the mayor of Dakar, who is still with us. It's late in Paris. It's Friday night and it's over 7 p.m., not so much in Dakar, 2 hours behind, but we want to thank all the team at Climate Change. We will meet in Dakar next year with Kodatu and Setud and the mayor of Dakar and Climate Change. We will meet also a little bit at the COP26 and at the beginning of December for the annual report of the Observatory of Climate Change, and an opportunity to say after the COP, and we hope this will be a success, it will be an opportunity to say what are we going to do to continue our climate action? How do we continue adapting our territories? We know that most of the global warming, unfortunately, is inevitable, and we do need to find adaptation measures. Thank you to the Climate Change team. Thank you to Thibaut Setud and Tierno and to Kodatu. For our first partnership, I'm sure there will be many more, and wishing you all a nice evening, a good weekend, and we will see you soon. Good evening to all. Goodbye.
C'est toi qui coupes.